Hola amigos de Lado Beat, John Lennon entrevistó a Paul McCartney y muchos en los comentarios me solicitaban que traduzca la entrevista, la subtitule. Quizá una de las más importantes que veremos del Beatle Paul McCartney conversando sobre su socio John Lennon y contando cosas que no se habían escuchado antes, nada más ni nada menos que con el hijo de este último, Sean. Entonces, sin más, presentemos la entrevista, en primera instancia subtitulada en su totalidad al español, para beneplácito de los suscriptores. Saben que este canal está al tanto de las noticias Beatle y del rock, y esta vez no es la excepción. Bueno, veamos o escuchemos. Estaremos comentando puntos importantes. Sean en primera instancia hace hincapié en que esta sociedad Lennon-McCartney es la más grande en la historia del rock y le pregunta a Paul cuándo se dio cuenta de que John era un muchacho especial. McCartney, a sus 78 años y en pleno 2020, respondió así.
I began by asking him when it was that he realized Dad was a special guy.
Yeah, well, the funny thing about your dad was that I'd seen him around a couple of times because I realized later what it was my bus route. He would take that bus, but he would be going to see his mum, who lived kind of in my area, and then he'd take the bus back up to his auntie, Mimi's. So I'd seen him a couple of times and thought, wow, he's an interesting looking guy, and then I once also saw him in a queue for fish and chips, and I said, oh, that's that guy off the bus. I'm talking to myself. In my mind, I thought, that's that guy off the bus. He is pretty cool looking. Yeah, he's a cool guy.
Esto es importante porque muchos no saben que Paul había visto a John unas cuantas veces antes de su primer encuentro en la fiesta de la iglesia en 1957. Y aquí lo cuenta. Muchos piensan que es en la fiesta de la villa en Woolton, 6 de julio de 1957, donde es el primerísimo contacto. Así que esto lo aclara muy bien. Sigamos, ya que sigue hablando de este tema.
And did you know he was a musician already at that point?
No, I knew nothing about him except that he looked pretty cool. He had long sideboards and a bit of greased back hair and everything,
Was that the teddy boy kind of look at the time?
Yeah, exactly. It was the teddy boy look, yeah.
Was that your look as well then, or were you more of a rocker?
Yeah, I think all of us were trying to do a bit of that at that point, so if you ever noticed anyone who was trying to do it, you thought, oh yeah, I'd probably get on well with him. But I didn't know anything about him, and I didn't know who he was, except that I'd seen him on the bus and I'd seen him in the fish and chip shop. But then my friend Ivan, who I knew at school, was a friend of John's and took me up to the Village Fete and introduced me there. So it was like, oh, that's that guy who I've been seeing. And then obviously I knew he was a musician because he was in the little band, the Quarrymen. And I got to sort of hang with them in the interval.
And they were sort of ragtag, right? I mean, we're talking about no guitar amplifiers, kind of a skiffle washboard thing.
No, it was very pre-rock and roll. It was, there'd been the old-fashioned kind of music, which was my dad's music, some of which I liked and, enjoyed. And then there'd been skiffle, which kind of broke it open. This was a kind of new kind of music to us. It was like bluesy, folksy, but you only had to have an acoustic guitar. You didn't need much equipment. And for the bass, they used to use a tea chest. We used to come in, all the tea came in it from India or somewhere. And you had a broomstick on the top and a string. So their group was pretty basic, little acoustic-y kind of thing.
Was it good, though? I mean, did you think they sounded good?
I thought John was good. I thought the group, it wasn't that good. I didn't think they were bad.
Y aquí como que Sean hace una pregunta que explica por qué Paul sería el más experimentado en música. Escuchemos.
But you knew because your dad played trumpet and you actually sort of had more of a real musical family in a way. I mean, right? You were more exposed to jazz.
I was lucky. My dad played music around the house a lot. And it was a very musical family. I was in all the big family sing-songs at New Year's, were quite huge occasions. And, the funny thing about this was that I thought everyone had families like mine, who were just sort of ordinary and just, all seemed to like each other or visited each other and sang and played the piano and stuff. And it was only later when I realized, probably through your dad's life,
right,
of how what a difficult upbringing he'd had compared to me.
Esto es muy interesante, es como una revelación que hace Sean en torno a su abuela paterna, así que muy atentos.
My grandmother Julia did play banjo and ukulele. Do you remember what she was like? Because I've actually never really spoken to anyone about my grandmother who actually met her in person before. What was she like?
This is one of the sadnesses about life, that you would have just loved her. She was a doll. She was just a very cool lady. She had long red hair and she was very spirited and she would sort of joke and stuff. And she did play a little banjo thing, and she taught John some chords. So when I met him, he used to play these kind of banjo chords, and so we had to swap it round to guitar. But she was lovely, and he idolized her. And it was so sad that he wasn't living with her and his half-sisters. But yeah, she was a terrific lady, a lot of fun, and we'd go round to their little council house, which was in the area where I lived, which was not quite as well off as the people up on the hill where John lived.
Right, he was in Menlove Avenue or something?
He was in Menlove Avenue, yeah, and I was off an avenue called Mather Avenue.
Posh, kind of relatively posh, right?
Compared to the rest of us in the Beatles, he was the posh one.
That's so funny. Because people didn't really think of it that way, I think, early on, did they?
Exactly. Well, and all the working class hero and all that, No, so John would come down, visit me, and then we'd walk, a mile or two down to where Julia's house was. And we would just do a visit. It was in a little line of terraces. It was a little council house, very modest. And we'd just have a visit. So, she'd make us a cup of tea and a sandwich and stuff. And we'd sit around chatting and stuff. And it was very obvious to me that John absolutely loved her and she absolutely loved him. So, as I say, she was fun. She was really ready with a joke. She was witty. And I suspect that's where he got a lot of his wit from.
And was Julia, she knew you guys were starting a band, was she supportive of it, or was it, and what about your dad? I mean, were the parents into it, or were they thinking it was a bit of a waste of time?
Yeah, I think she thought it was a fun idea, because she was a bit of a musician herself. So, and my dad was the other one who had actually been a musician in a little band. So he was super supportive and we would go around there to rehearse. But sometimes we'd take our guitars round to Julia's and sort of play a little something, and she loved it. She was very supportive.
I always got the impression that Dad felt, and maybe expressed in different ways over the years, that somehow he wasn't officially a true musician or something, and that everyone else was. I mean, was there that kind of feeling that he thought, I'm not a real musician?
I don't think any of us were, tell you the truth. And I think that was a very good, strong thing about us, actually, funnily enough. We all had to learn together. So the nearest to John feeling like he wasn't a true musician could have been that, in the skiffle craze, when everyone else is playing guitar chords, he only knew a couple of banjo chords. But that only lasted, you know, a week or two. And I would just show him chords I knew, which is very basic. But it was great bonding, you know, just learning chords off each other. And I think the minute he knew those chords, he was as good as anyone. And he might have had a little bit of a hang-up about not being a sort of musically trained, but none of us were. And I think that was one of the strengths of the Beatles, that none of us knew what we were doing. So we had to discover the route for ourselves, you know, and each of us discovered it together at the same time. So that was lovely. It meant that when we came to record or play live, we all were new at it, and we all learned at the same speed. Which I think when we came to record with George Martin later on meant that John and I could bring in a song and just play it. You know, there's anything that you want. Kind of, oh, wait a minute, let me take those chords down. It was like, no, we'd grown up together, so we just read each other.
I remember the story of you learning B7 or something, and that was sort of a big breakthrough.
That was a breakthrough, major breakthrough. Now, it was well, it's a kind of slightly complicated chord in that set of chords, because, you know, A and E, they're not too bad.
But you can't really play the blues if you don't also have that last chord, can you?
You got to have that last chord, you know. So it was true. I mean, it's a distant memory for me now, and I've told the story so many times I'm beginning to think it's not true. But it is true that we actually did go on a bus to some guy's house, who somebody had said, oh no, this guy's good, he knows B7. And we went and we learned it off him, you know. It was kind of good that we didn't know too much, because you had to just say, oh, it's this chord, and show him this chord, yeah, okay. And even with this complicated timings in things, I don't like, Here Comes the Sun, you know, with this who was more sophisticated than the other or whatever. And there maybe is some truth that musically I had an edge because my dad had shown us some things, and I'd learned the guitar chords a bit before John. But it wasn't so much that, the sophistication, it was attitudes. So my attitude would be, this is what I want to do. And then John would bring another edge to it. So what was the great thing was the combination of those two attitudes. You know, and I look back on it now like a fan. You know, I think, wow, you know, how lucky was I to meet this strange teddy boy off the bus who turned out to play music like I did, and we get together, and boy, we complimented each other. You know, it was a bit yin-yang. You know, they say with marriages, opposites attract. And I think, I mean, we weren't like madly opposite, but I had some stuff he didn't have, and he had some stuff I didn't have. So when you put them together, it made something extra.
It really did. I mean, when I look at you guys, just, you know, as a fan myself, when you wrote Yesterday, it just seems like a real, like a comet from outer space. It's just kind of, it's really like a breakthrough for you guys musically. Do you remember? I also always felt that might be true, or I've heard that was true of my dad writing Strawberry Fields. Do you remember feeling anything special about him writing that or playing it for you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in fact, it's funny. I heard it on the radio coming in this morning.
Really?
Yeah, I thought, this is a sign. The time I was there, it had been closed down. And John would say, oh, look, you know, this is Strawberry Fields, and there's, you know, used to be old kids playing in there and stuff. So when we came to get the song together, John, it was essentially John's song, and he sort of brought it in. but it was such a lovely piece, and I think very ahead of its time with all the lyrics. You know, I think yes, I don't, maybe, hello. And I know I had one of his first LPs at home before the Beatles. You know, I used to play that quite a lot, so I was steeped in him, and I think your dad was too. So, but that was just one of the influences. You know, there's an awful lot more, because Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane, those are very much us remembering our youth. And, you know, it's a funny thing we used to say when we were a little older, like 20-something.
Yeah, you were really young.
Which look like babies, you know, but we thought we were kind of men of the universe and big men by then. You know, it's, as we got a little bit older, if ever there was like a problem with a song or recording, we'd often say, what would our 17-year-old self think? And we like refer back, because that was the wisest age, we reckoned. You know, if it's 17, you go, nah, it's a load of crap.
Right, you had it all figured out.
That's great, needs more drums, or, you know, just very basic thinking. It was a whole very exciting time. And I say, with Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane, you know, if I'd say Penny Lane and talk about the barbershop. Penny